Today my talk will be on the topic Environmental Renaissance and Corona Crisis. Before we move ahead into this inquisitive subject matter, I would like to take you all back to the period between 5th and 14th century Europe. In the history of Europe, this period was referred as the Middle Ages, often called as the Dark Ages. This time span, according to many scholars and historians, corresponded to the deterioration of human civilization in all spheres of life. Can anyone in the audience imagine how dark were those dark ages? To be really honest, these dark ages were very, very dark. At this time, logic, rationalism were relatively unknown. Superstition, black magic, scholasticism, frog in the well syndrome took the forefront, and then occurred the Black Death. It was the bubonic plague, which occurred in Europe from 1346 to 1353. The Black Death was a fatal catastrophe that created social, economic, political, religious upheavals, further causing the death of millions of individuals. Just to tell you all the extent of the problems and challenges of this Black Death in the Dark Ages, I would like to quote Giovanni Boccaccio, an Italian writer and poet. He wrote a description of this plague in his book called the Decameron, and I quote him: "No human wisdom or provision was of any help. Sick people were forbidden to enter the city. No doctor's advice or medicine seemed to be of any help. Either the disease was incurable or the doctors simply did not know how to cure it." Giovanni further described there were dead bodies all over and were treated badly. Nor were the dead honored with tears, light, or companions. The amount of holy ground available for burial was insufficient. Many of the people sitting in the audience might be wondering, was I describing the aftermath of coronavirus outbreak? Or was I talking about the Black Death of 1350s? Well, let's come fast forward for a moment to 2020-2021. The above illustration holds coincidentally quite close to what happened after the COVID-19 catastrophe. Let me tell you all a story. There were 12 ships in the Italian port of Messina in 1347. The sailors on the board were all either dead or gravely ill, covered in the oozing pus-filled boils that gave the greatest pandemic of the Middle Ages its lasting moniker, that is the Black Death. And ladies and gentlemen, we are now in the middle of Corona health emergency. Now let me ask you all, were there any similarities between Black Death and Corona catastrophe? Think over it. I will tell you a few of historical coincidences between the Black Death and Corona crisis. Number one, in 2011, an international group of scientists published a paper in a multidisciplinary science journal named as Nature, and they traced the genetic root of the bacterium that caused the bubonic plague in the Middle Ages. Their conclusion was the infection originated in the areas nearby China or in China. Same is the case with the COVID-19. It originated in Wuhan in China. The second similarity is that the recumbent transmission as animal to human, the rats were ultimately the cause then. And now in 2020-2021, Corona-19, the COVID-19 is being said to be transmitted to the humans by either bat or pangolins. Third similarity is that the travel routes were the preeminent vectors then as now. And the most striking similarity, which every one individual on this earth will feel, that the fear, anxiety, and hope were dominant emotions now as they were at the Black Ages. Although the Black Death shook the foundations of the European society, but thereafter The society was flooded with new ideas, new explorations, new methods, which in turn led to Renaissance, a period of blossoming creativity, curiosity, and innovation. Nearly 670 years after this European Renaissance, all across the globe, we today need environmental renaissance. And it will be prominent distinction if this ideology of environmental renaissance, this philosophy of environmental renaissance starts from here, from Afghanistan. Well, many of you will be surprised to know that according to a BBC News report, the world's first oil paintings were drawn not in Renaissance Europe, but they were here drawn in the caves of Bamiyan in the central highlands of Afghanistan around 650 BC. So ladies and gentlemen, it's the time to turn coronavirus backwash into a period of ever-continuing environmental renaissance, for making this planet a better place to live for us and our future generations. Before I unfold the concept of environmental renaissance, I would like to ask the audience of this esteemed TEDxKabulUniversity stage that what do we people think of environmental renaissance? What do you know about it? As you see, there are two words: environmental, that is related to nature, and renaissance, which means rebirth or reawakening. Therefore, environmental renaissance, in a very simpler terms, ask us, we the Homo sapiens, to reset our relationships with the natural environment. It asks us to reinvent ourselves and to save this planet from our own inappropriate actions. Environmental renaissance requests us to reawaken the humanity in the humans. It appeals to each and every individual to look deep into our hearts, that if we do this without any prejudice, we will all agree to the fact that it is our moral responsibility to protect and conserve the environment. Environmental renaissance expounds on the fact that it needs no further elaboration to understand that maintaining a healthy relationship with the natural environment is fundamental for our own well-being. Environmental renaissance helps us to solve the debate between anthropocentrism versus ecocentrism. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the world today is suffering from homocentralism or human supremacism. That is the prejudiced belief that human beings are the most important entities in this universe. Well, this is a false conviction. This is a very false conviction, and this is the ultimate reason of environmental degradation. Ever since the Industrial Revolution of Great Britain, man has continuously remained at odds with nature, constantly attacking, degrading, polluting the environment as per his or her own convenience. Environmental renaissance is against this authoritative notion of anthropocentrism and advocates for ecocentrism. Well, ecocentrism is derived from two Greek words, eikos, meaning home, and kentron, which means center. So it denotes a nature-centered approach as opposed to human-centered approach. Anthropocentrism is basically is something which is against environmental renaissance, whereas environmental renaissance promotes ecocentrism. Environmental renaissance contradicts anthropocentrism, as anthropocentrism portrays man as a pivot of everything in this world. Ecocentrism opposes this because it holds the view that if Homo sapiens, we the humans, are considered to be the most important species in this universe, or at least on Earth, the environmental calamity is ought to happen. Well, now the question arises how this ideology or this philosophy of environmental renaissance can be practically worked out by each and every individual. Well, let me give you a very practical solution. 5 R's is the practical solution to this crisis. 5 R's here stand for reduce, reuse, recycle, rethink, and reunion. Well, the first R is reduce. It simply means living more carefully so that we have less of waste. or less rubbish to get rid of? Well, I think avoiding waste is preferable option of waste management. For example, we all know that plastic is very dangerous to the nature. It takes approximately, according to some researchers, it takes approximately near 500 years for a single plastic to degrade, which means that every single plastic bag, bottle, cap, straw, toothbrush that we have ever used in our lives is either sitting in a landfill or on a beach or at the bottom of the ocean. The best way to reduce this plastic or any environmental pollutant, or for instance any toxic substance, is just to say no to it. Environmental Renaissance instructs us to reorient our behavior towards nature, as it makes us aware of about our duties and responsibilities. Therefore, the best course of action is to start by saying that every individual realizes that he or she doesn't use plastic and uses cloth bags to buy goods. Let's start from here. Let's make this campus of Kabul University plastic free. No plastic bottle, no plastic carry bag, nothing related to plastic to be allowed. Let me move to the second R, which is reuse. Well, it means to use the same item more than once, preferably many times, rather than disposing it after one use. It helps us to reduce the environmental economic waste in this process. For example, we have microwave dinner trays or plates which can be used as picnic dishes rather than buying the same disposable plastic plates whenever we or wherever we go. The third R, ladies and gentlemen, is of recycle. Well, recycling is a process in which the used materials are being used into new products to save resources and energy. For example, collection of old newspaper magazines for repulping and creating a new paper products from those. We can start from here in this Kabul University with the recycled paper. It can be used as a letterhead, as newsletters, or the university magazines, or a copier paper. Well, these three R's are more widely being spoken or talked about in the global arena, but let me tell you, the ideology, the philosophy of environmental renaissance tells us about two more R's, and they are very important. Reunion, as environmental renaissance stands for revival of our relationship with nature. This revival of man and environmental relationship can never take place in the concrete of jungles, which the modern day society is constructing in the form of new townships, malls, skyscrapers and buildings. Environmental renaissance invokes the sentiment of reunion with nature, and this reunion can occur if we have trees and plants in our surroundings. Well, for this, the best way is to execute a plantation drive, but it can be done in a more responsible way in the educational institutes all across the globe. Educational institutes can play a very good role. Well, let's start from here. In this college, university or college management should ask to every new admission to plant a tree in this campus. You pass a semester and you have to plant another tree, another plant, and make sure that it is the responsibility of that respective student to take care of his or her plant for the requisitive duration for which he or she resides in the campus, he or she is studying in the campus. I think it's the best way of reunion with nature. An individual by this method can develop a moral and ethical commitment to protect and conserve the environment. The fifth R is of rethink. Well, we should consider or make a reassessment of all of our actions that impact the environment directly, indirectly, or remotely. Environmental renaissance, ladies and gentlemen, demands us to rethink about even our smallest action that an individual takes vis-a-vis environment. For instance, say for a short distance commutation, is it necessary to use an automobile? No, it's not. If we rethink of our decision of using an automobile for traveling short distances, we may feel that even the smallest act of biking or walking can reduce the greenhouse gas emissions and reduce our own individual carbon footprint. So please rethink. Therefore, it's high time today that we start to take the pledge of environmental renaissance, which asks us to work towards a cleaner and a healthier and a more prosperous planet Earth. Well, as the Black Death led to European Renaissance, which contributed to new discoveries, new innovations, scientific temper, rationalism, and further changed the trajectory of development of human civilization. Ladies and gentlemen, what I feel is that coronavirus has a message for us. Perhaps everyone would have seen before and after lockdown images of the nature. Coronavirus has given us an opportunity to unearth thyself, to follow the ideology, to follow this philosophy of environmental renaissance and express our gratitude to the planet for the abundance of care and compassion. Well, to conclude, I feel that coronavirus has a hidden message for all of us. That is of environmental renaissance, and I would like to break the coronavirus as C here stands for consciously, O for obediently use, R for the resources of Mother Earth, O again for optimistically conserve, N for natural, and A to be alive. Therefore, coronavirus tells us to reinvent the reinvention of ourselves. The reinterpretation tells us to reaffirm the 5 R's of environmental renaissance, so that we regain our humanity marked with benevolence towards the environment. While the coronavirus will be vanquished, please do not forget our duties, our responsibilities of environmental conservation and protection, as instructed by my philosophy of environmental renaissance. Thank you so much.